Hello y'all. This is the Hearts of Iron 4-mod Old World Blues, which is all about the Fallout universe, and on that note, this video will serve as part 1 of a Kingdom of Manitoba playthrough. The wonderful dev team behind OWB has provided me early access to version 5.0, where the Kingdom of Manitoba will receive content. I believe it's called Ashes from Embers, and so it is focusing on Alberta to Manitoba to Montana/Wyoming, and let's go to the Canadian prairies. I should note this is kind of an early access version, so what we see in this playthrough may not reflect what is seen in the final version of the update that is released to the public in, I believe, late February. So we have the Canadian prairies here, and it says, in the days of old that came after the bombs fell, the CPF used to rule from their sacred capital, Redmond, all the way to the fringes of Ontario. For decades, the entirety of the West laid under the Crimson Banner, with Canada's old capital always one push away, always one lost march away. But for the CPF, this was never meant to be, eventually collapsing more and more under its own weight. First came the warlord from Winnipeg, the one they now call King Gun I, who himself capitalized on the Red Army's overextension by promoting dignity to other petty warlords. And if that wasn't bad enough, the party split into two, stopping us from ever retaking the Pearl of Manitoba. The PRC, or electors as they, quote-unquote electors as they now called them, traitors one and all. What became of the Albertan steppes? Don't get me started at it. Greed is the worst sin of them all. I fear dark days are ahead for all of us in the old guard, with more and more of our own turning on us. Is this maybe what they call the winds of change? We're now on the select country screen for the Canadian prairies, and I should note that Canada and Fallout lore as of this time, there isn't much that happened there, so there is going to be a lot of original material here, because Canada and Fallout basically got annexed by the USA, and there were some rebels, and there was also some random encounters relating to it in Fallout Tactics, I believe. And so we have the brief history of the Kingdom of Manitoba here, and it says, the Kingdom of Manitoba stands at a crossroad. Founded over 100 years ago, it stood long as the sole guarantor of peace and stability in the north, before a devastating civil war and an uneasy peace settlement nearly led to its collapse. As time seems to finally catch up to King Gun II, the country's leader, the only question on his failing mind is if he will be able to keep the realm together, or if Canada's last hope is destined to fade into the eternal darkness with him. Most of part 1 of this playthrough series will most likely be spent on reading events and just establishing the starting situation for the Kingdom of Manitoba, which is led by Gun II. And we do have a faction called the Kingdom of Manitoba, which consists of Manitoba and the Duchy of Langenberg, which is just a member of that faction, I suppose, and Manitoba is the leader of it, and so the ruling ideology is ruler, and Gun II is the country leader. His trait is Ancient One, so we get some daily political power gain, very nice. He is a ghoul, and his description here says, King Gun, the second of his name, has ruled the kingdom since the disaster of the First Coalition War. As an ancient ghoul, he was there when Canada fell to American aggression, serving as a member of parliament. He was there when the CPF collapsed in Manitoba and saw the rise of the kingdom by the warlord of Winnipeg. Now he rules the kingdom, taking the name of its first king in an attempt to maintain it in the face of rebellions and strife. Yet heavy is the head that wears the crown. Gun was an old man before the Great War, and is older still, plagued by a dark degradation known only to his beloved wife Catherine and his right-hand man Tanner. Gun must act quickly before he succumbs. The kingdom must prevail. And ghouls are kind of like in Fallout. They're people that got hit with radiation and they didn't die, but they have extremely long lives. And the downside of this is that they can become feral, which is, they can be very dangerous if that happens. Now let's go to the national spirits. We have economic blockade, There is Defeat at Stonewall, the Ancestor Cults, and Queen Catherine. And I do plan on reading all of those, but for now let's just start to focus. Founding of the Kingdom. And Old World Blues as a mod is known for its few starting focuses that let you choose what bonuses you want to give your country. It really helps with replay value, I think. So we have Founding of the Kingdom. The time before the Kingdom was a time of anarchy and suffering. We have grown much since then, and this will give us an event called the Dark Ages. And so let's read the national spirit now. So economic blockade, negative, really it has negative consequences. The War of the First Coalition officially ended with the conditional surrender of the Kingdom of Manitoba and the subsequent establishment of a demilitarized zone between it and the Republic of the Three Rivers. This is right here. I think the Three Rivers, they occupy Winnipeg. I think so. Brandon is the second largest city in real life of the Canadian province of Manitoba. I just noticed our 3D models for our infantry are Mounties. That is pretty cool. But we have this demilitarized zone here, and just reading more and more of this led to a loss of a large part of its former territory, and even more importantly, the all-important access to Winnipeg and the southern silver trade routes, the southern river trade routes, blocked off from its important markets and its former trade partners. The Kingdom is now desperate to end the blockade or find new markets elsewhere. Then we had the defeat at Stonewall. The death of King Brandon XI, the Battle of Stonewall, shattered many people's faith in the monarchy entirely. Manitoba may have survived the war, but only time will tell if it will ever truly recover. Ancestor cults. Unlike many traditional monarchies, the wealth of the previous ruler isn't completely inherited by their chosen successor. Rather, it is independently managed by different families tasked with spending it in the best interest of the deceased, while in theory beneficial for maintaining the realm's stability, as no individual can single-handedly squander the achievements of their predecessor. In practice, it causes a significant portion of the nation's wealth to be stuck in the hands of the rich families, single-mindedly focused on maintaining their own status at the cost of the kingdom. And then we have Queen Catherine. In many ways, this is a pretty positive national spirit. In many ways, the complete opposite to the king, the graceful Queen Catherine seems to have developed a certain fondness for the ancient ghoul over the years. Her genuine, kind-hearted nature has led her to undertake several programs in favor of the common citizenry, earning her the love and adoration of the people. While King Gun often appears distant to his wife in public, he has nonetheless shown a willingness to fund their often expensive endeavors. So that is all the national spirits we have. Now we have the military. That is 17. We have a total of 17 divisions. No Navy, of course, or Air Force, because those aren't really a thing initially when you start out in Old World Blues. We have the Army here, and let's get a general. We have William Tanner, Grayson Hauser, Alexander Garibaldi, and Jack Tobarek. And let's get William Tanner here in charge of the forces, and our divisions consist of levies, which are militia units, the men-at-arms, which are infantry, the Mounties, named after the Mounties, I think the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. They are our special forces, our spec ops, and then we have the light cavalry, and they are basically motorized units, and they have snowmobiles, and the 3D models for the Mounties looks pretty good. They look pretty nice indeed. Now let's go to the research tree and start doing warrior training, then start doing, say, what else? What can we do here? Do industry planning and start doing the focus construction basics. Terrific. Now we're going to do organized agriculture. Terrific. And let's go to the civilian factories. We'll build some stuff. And where's it best? Build in our capital, Brandon. Focus on Brandon for now. Give Brandon all of the attention it needs to prosper. And let's build some convoys, maybe. Do we need convoys? We have, I think, 60 already. So let's just build some canoe holes, I suppose. Let's now get that focus done we're doing and speed up time here. And so the founding of the kingdom, that will only take 7 days. And so for military policies, we have ghoul recruitment, local leaders, and we have the Dark Ages. And let's just ignore the economics event, the CAPS update as it's called. I've already played it. The Dark Ages, long before the time of kings and republics, and in the radioactive winter of the Great War, when the craters still burned with atomic fire, there were the people of Manitoba. These people, broken by the American invasion, and reeling from the very depth of the world, have lost everything. And when one loses all they have, they seek to take what others possess. What power the Red Fighters of the Canadian People's Front, that's what the CPF stands for, the Canadian People's Front, had once held in the previous, was quickly taken by the now desperate and deadly locals, forcing them westward. It was then that the Dark Ages began. Manitoba descended into decades of violence. Where there had once been neighbors, now stood rival gangs, fighting with each other in an internal struggle for survival. Those who lacked the will or proved too weak found themselves the victims of stronger warlords and war bands. For 50 years, the land stood divided until one day one warlord would stake his claim. The man known only as Gun, who had claimed the city of Winnipeg from what remained of the Red Menace, would do what no communist, does that say communist? I guess so, or raider had done since the Great War. From his seat of power, Gun would expand his domain through violence, not through violence, but rather diplomacy. The first to submit were the Masters of Brandon, whose submission granted them the honor of dukedom, and with it the warlord of Brandon would become heir to the king of Manitoba. Many would submit, and in turn with the privilege of nobility in the new kingdom, the kingdom as duchies, and once offering something to strengthen the new realm. Of these gifts, the king showed the most favor to, so we have the industrial might of Brandon, the commercial innovation of Winnipeg, and the military prowess of Langenberg. And I think the industrial might of Brandon might be better because it does give us more civilian workshops and naval dockyards in Brandon. And yeah, that's just more useful than infrastructure and air bases, or a bonus toward land doctrine and army experience currently. And so that's going to give us more industrial power in Brandon. And now let's do the focus. The end of the Golden Age. 7 days. It was here we reached our apex, our glory unmatched in all of Canada. It was not to last. And that will give us an event. And let's see what that is going to have in store for us. And let's move all of our divisions to the border of, I don't know, just put them all, just have them do exercises maybe. What are we manufacturing even? Let me check. What are we making? Construction, production. Okay, we're making anti-tank rifles, pipe guns, and support equipment. We are making those canoes I mentioned earlier, I'm pretty sure. And now we have the end of the Golden Age, a kingdom ascendant, an age of decline. And so the age of the kingdom began. King Gun expanded the kingdom for many years before vanishing into the frozen waste, leaving the kingdom to his heir. Many decades would pass with different kings from the Brandon line claiming the throne, some mighty and honorable, such as Brandon IV, and some weak-willed and shameful, such as Mad Brandon V. It would be during this age that the kingdom reached its greatest height, stretching from the Duchy of Langenberg to the royal Crownlands and to the Duchy of Angers. The kingdom was strong, proud, and a force to be respected. All was good in the lands of Manitoba. Yet it was not to be. As the age of the kingdom ended, the age of decline would begin. The kings grew weak and complacent, the nobility scheming and self-serving, and many a peasant revolt occurred. Cruel kings such as Brandon the Eighth, I think that says Brandon the Eighth, it's in Roman numerals, had short reigns marred by blood and strife. Despite all of the signs, the kingdom was blind to the crisis that was bubbling underneath its very feet. It was too busy discussing the latest trends or the planning of the next royal feast that was until the bubble burst. The war of the First Republican Coalition marked the end of the age of decline and ushered in the current age. The rebellious Three Rivers Republic and Matthew's Congress marched against the kingdom, intent on destroying all that it held dear. In their greatest moment of arrogance, the last king of Guns line, Brandon the 11th, I think it's X and I, so the 11th, I believe, marched against Republican forces during the Battle of Stonewall and was slaughtered. If not for the actions of Count Yorkton of Langenberg in destroying the Metis army, many believe the kingdom would have fallen. As a hasty peace was signed, hundreds fled from the Republican horde, bringing with them their wealth or their desire for revenge or their weapons. Let's go with their desire for revenge. And with that, I'm going to end what is part 1 of my Kingdom of Manitoba playthrough in the Hearts of Iron 4 mod Old World Blues here. If you enjoyed the mod, you can check it out in the video description. If you enjoyed the video itself, make sure to like and subscribe.